Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started with our Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session continued. Today we have 7 items, and we're going to get right into this. First, we have our Office of Legislative Oversight, and for that we have Mr. Silar. If you can approach us. And I do see that the FY23 County Executive recommendation is of $2,215,034. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Silar to share with us a little bit about this budget request and some of the work that you guys have done.
Okay, so the budget is pretty much the same as last year. It's up $17,000, which is money we just took over from the NDA because the NDA is not up for renewal. So Blaze will be spending less time on that and more time on other projects. So that's the only difference from last year and the only real change. Next year we are, I think, anticipating doing climate impact statements. I don't think that that's going to affect our budget as some of the other impact statements have, because I have somebody on staff who we're just going to transfer over to do that. So we can then discuss if we're behind on other projects by that transfer, but it's not going to affect the general budget for next year. I don't think I really have anything else to comment on except for that.
And just very briefly, I know that this has been sort of a really interesting process with the racial equity and social justice impact notes. It's kind of new, et cetera. Can you just give us a very quick observation on how that's going?
So I think that, some of the challenges that we're running into, I think we're doing a good job getting through them. Timing, 3 weeks is tough sometimes, so we don't get into as deep of a discussion as maybe we would like. I think that that's, kind of one thing that we would like, more time. I don't know how we actually can do that given the regulations of when the bills come out and that type of stuff. But that's kind of been one of the challenges, to have them go as in depth as possible. I think also kind of coming up with the way that the statements can meet the expectations of the council members. I think one of the challenges has been with honestly, with the amendments, the requirement that we recommend amendments when there's a negative impact on the bill. I think that has been a challenge for us coming up with. One, amendments that are, and I've discussed this with a couple council members, we have made recommendations that we're not legally allowed to do, which I think has been a challenge. The state controls it, federal government controls it, and so we have changed some processes. I have the 2 lawyers on staff, and so we're having them review those to make sure that the amendments we make, it's not fair to give you amendments that you can't act on. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's been one of the issues that has come up and has been noted, and we are working to correct over the next year. So I have it going to 2 lawyers now to make sure that we're not coming up with amendments that would be you guys would be unable to implement. So that's been one area. I think it's been interesting because we've got NYU has contacted us. We're a leader in this field, and so they were very interested in what we're doing. We're working with them to kind of explain our process. This is through their law center, and they're going through our work.
Well, the state of New York did utilize our law as a template for what they passed, so I'm not surprised that. Yeah,
and so it's neat though that the law school going through and kind of rigorously going through the work, and so it's been neat to see that this is so far out in front of other jurisdictions. So I think that that's been very positive. That's the most positive piece of it. It's just kind of the feedback we're getting, and there are challenges, but I think that we're working through them and have done a pretty good job with them.
No, I appreciate that you're sharing this, and I do want to absolutely express my both admiration and appreciation for what you guys have done, because this is groundbreaking. I had a long conversation with Councilmember Phil Mendelson from Washington, D.C., as they're also embarking in this, and it's interesting to compare notes. One thing that I hope, and this will be more for my colleagues who are hopefully going to be returning. One of the original thoughts about this whole process with the legislation was to also create a committee on the council that could review these types of initiatives. And so that way, whether it's a bi-monthly or quarterly review of how things are going, what have been some of the lessons learned, what can be perhaps tweaked in terms of the process. And so this one in particular, I think, would fall under something like that. I know on the Board of Education when I served, we had a committee on strategic, initiatives. And so the idea was, hey, let's, it's hard to have that kind of in-depth conversation and analysis as you're going through everything, but if you have a moment to pause, whether it's, as I said, by, a quarterly or something like that, it allows for that type of in-depth look. And so I'm hoping now that, of course, there'll be more council members, et cetera. Maybe there would be a consideration of establishing that kind of process, and because this will be that type of experience, right? You'll have to tweak it as you go because it's so unique and new and all of that.
I think that'd be really helpful. I mean, especially with the pandemic and not being in the office, it's been a challenge, I think, for Dr. Bonner Tompkins, who runs it, the work to touch base with every council member and to see what their feedback is. And so I think that would be exceptionally helpful to the work that she's doing.
Awesome. And so did you also cover the independent audit? No. Yeah. That's next. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll do any comments from my colleagues or any questions about item number 1, Office of Legislative Oversight. Without any objection, we will support that. All right. So number 2 is the Independent Audit Nda. I don't know why Mr. Seelar is listed as being the person to talk about this. That's why I was so confused.
So I'll turn it over to Blaze for our audit work.
We like to be so formal around here.
Ed McMahon of the
Mr. DeFazio.
No real change. It's basically going to be the same services budget. This is going to be, I believe this is the 3rd year of our latest audit contract. And so the following year, we'll be ramping up to do a new RFP because every 4 years we do a new RFP. So, and last couple of years have been great, clean audits. So hope they continue.
All right. Any questions from my colleagues?
Based on that introduction, how could you say that?
Without objection, we will approve $427,882 for the independent audit Nda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 3 is the Charter Review Commission Nda, and that is Ms. Wellens.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair Navarro and council members. As you know, the Charter Review Commission Nda fluctuates between $150 and $1,150, depending upon whether a report is due that year. And the Charter Review Commission just completed its report, so the next fiscal year does not have one, so the proposed budget is $150.
I don't know, colleagues. Are you sure you want to support this particular? Yeah, it's a little pricey. All right, without objection, we will approve the $150.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now to our council office, and we have Ms. Michelson.
We have slightly different numbers to talk about with the council.
Just a little different.
But I want to start off first by acknowledging that Sandra Marin is quietly the most important person on council staff. As you all know, she is running our human resources, helping with all our staffing, and working on the budget. And I personally would be lost without her, so I just have to acknowledge that here. So.
Yes, Sandra.
Yes.
We are witness to that quiet efficiency that she brings to our operations.
So we do have some significant changes in the council office budget this year, but they are almost exclusively related to the addition of 2 new council members. And so what you'll see in this budget is 12 new positions in 2 council member offices. Each office will determine the exact number of staff, but that's the average of what most offices have, a council member and 5 staff members. So we've included the funding for that. Every 4 years, we also have severance pay and leave payout for departing staff members. So that's in the council member offices. In central staff, we've also looked at what additional staffing we will need to meet the needs of the new council members. And, we've taken an estimate, but quite honestly, we won't know until we see the new council members exactly. So you'll see on page 3 where we have a summary of the positions. Some of these positions we're holding until we have the new council members on board. We are assuming we're going to need a new legislative services coordinator to work with additional staff. We are going to hire a paralegal specialist to help with additional legal work that we believe we have. We have one position that will either be a legislative analyst or a new attorney once we assess what the needs of the new council members are. And I'm really excited to announce that we're going to have a new council fellows program. I know you're very familiar with the summer fellows program where we bring in graduate students between years of school. This year we'll be starting a new program. It will be a one-year program very similar to the Presidential Management Fellows Program, which gives people right out of graduate school an opportunity for a one-year rotation in government. And not only do we really like bringing in young people with new ideas right out of school, but we think this is going to be really critical to ramp up our ability to be doing research for council members and to really be tracking what's going on across the country. Something we don't have the luxury of doing with our existing staff members. So we're really excited about this new program. I think the applications are actually due today for the first 3 fellows who would start in September. And I did also want to note, we are always looking for ways to operate more efficiently and change our operations in the council. And I know you've seen a lot of that over these last 2 years as we first went entirely remote and now to hybrid. We're looking at streamlining a lot of our processes, in particular in the Legislative Information Services Office and Clerk's Office. We're working with the Office of Innovation to restructure the processes from one that was very heavily paper dependent to one that is now really focused on electronic document management. So I think you're going to continue to see a lot of exciting changes as we work on that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I mean, it's, I think this is such an interesting moment. I mean, for me personally, as I have seen how we have been able to strengthen the council staff capacity, also really reflecting on what it means to be a body that has such a generous charter. Anytime I have an opportunity to talk about the Montgomery County Council and I explain that this body is in charge of adopting all legislation, makes decision on all land use, as well as can add or subtract to the budget, it means that this is a very, very powerful body. And because of that, then it requires the appropriate capacity for central office staff as well as council member staff to provide the best advice and direction when it comes to policies that will affect over 1.1 million residents that speak more than 160 languages. And so when you really look at it from that perspective, this is an incredible operation with an extraordinary impact. And we saw that firsthand during this pandemic. Absolutely. I mean, the way that everybody just stepped up and, made that pivot and adapted was just extraordinary. So I again, want to express my deep admiration and appreciation. This was a very difficult test, but I think it also provided an opportunity to reflect on, where the council needs to go, what are the things that we can continue to do, and where are some innovation that we should take advantage of, especially as it is going to expand. So I want to just, thank all of you, our central office staff. Wow, I mean, I remember, when special appropriations were kind of like these protected golden things that you just didn't touch unless it was like an emergency. And boy, did we pass so many special appropriations where we had to, in real time, address so many specific details that would then position this county in the best possible footing to ride this pandemic. And everyone, as I said, was just extraordinary, brought their talent, and not an easy thing, again, when we're talking about a county of this size and so complex. Ms. Sonia Healy, I mean, you literally took that office way back in the day when we started looking at what we could do. And when the NDA was created and we began to assess every year the needs of that office, boy, did that help out during this pandemic in particular, and many of us felt that we absolutely needed to have a strong communication vehicle here on the county council. And I am just in awe of how it has really evolved in such an amazing way, and what still needs to happen going forward, because we know that those needs continue to grow. And to be honest, I think because such a good job was done during the pandemic, so many communities that before were not even in tune with what the council was doing are now in tune and are going to be demanding real-time information so they can participate. And that is a good thing. It's an amazing thing. So I could not be, more sort of proud of this extraordinary team, this collective team, for what you have done and what we'll undoubtedly continue to do, because that's what our constituents expect and demand. And I think that will be really wonderful to see from afar after I leave. So with that, colleagues, any objection? Thank you so much, Ms. Michelson, for leading us through this extraordinary time and for all your work. And thank you to everyone on the central office staff as well. Without objection, we will adopt this recommended budget, which is $14,151,923. The increase absolutely related to the addition of 2 council members, their staff, and those operations. Thank you.
Great. Well, our next budget is the Communications Nda, and Chair Navarro, you gave a wonderful introduction. There is probably no facet of our organization that has changed more than our communications team under the leadership of Sonia Healy. It has been phenomenal in terms of the services they provided, and the new focus with a multicultural communications manager who we are in the midst of hiring right now, translator, new services, almost entirely brand new staff, and they are amazing. We have some incredible members of this new team. So let's talk about the changes in this budget. First of all, we are going to get a new communications management system. This is what helps us log in all of the correspondence that comes to the council. We are in the final stages of negotiating with a selected bidder with a system that we think is going to be a dramatic improvement over the current IQ system, both for the users and for the public. And I think you'll see some really exciting changes once we have that in place. In addition, we are taking 2 contractual positions and making them full-time. One is that when we thought we had this temporary remote model, we hired a contractor to help us navigate those Zoom meetings. We have since decided that that is a really good model to have on an ongoing basis, to have the ability to be hybrid. And nothing has been more exciting than watching our public hearings, where I know you've seen people testifying from their cars. And so rather than coming into the council, they have that ability to participate. So this should no longer be contractual. This should be a full-time staff member to provide that capacity on an ongoing basis. Another conversion is we had a contractual help desk staff member who has been part-time, but the demand for those services are so great that we do believe that needs to be changed to a full-time staff member. And then with the addition of 2 new council members and the expanded IT requirements, as people are continuing to look at different models, different hardware, we have some council members using Windows, some using Apple. So we do need an additional IT staff person that would start when the new council starts. So those are the basic changes for those office. Ms. Healy, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to take a moment of personal privilege with the chair and let her know how much I've appreciated her vision in establishing the Office of Communications. You and I have been on a really long journey, and just your foresight and your vision to get us up and running to establish a true communications office for the council. You and I will remember a time many councils ago when there was strong resistance, and you fought for us. and we really appreciate it. And as well as to Councilmember Katz and Councilmember Friedson, your support throughout the years has been amazing, and we really do appreciate it. And I just wanted to also mention the staff, because as you know, we've the last 2 years had a 50% staff turnover, and everybody pulled together, including members of your own teams, to help get us through the pandemic and get out critical information. So I just really wanted to say thank you and express my deep gratitude.
Thank you so much for that. It is true that many times we do come up with initiatives and observations that are a bit new and different, and it takes a little while for people to understand why that is important. But it also, takes leadership like you to understand that and then be able to execute. And that is that combination that is so important, because as you know, my journey for me, I don't know how many times I've heard in my lifetime that I'm ahead of my time, but I just see a lot of things coming, and sometimes it's hard because maybe others don't see it right away, but it works. And the staff that you've had also has embodied and taken that assignment to heart, because it has been new. And again, it's been a model nationally. So, but it's thanks to you and your ability to understand this and then execute it. So I know it's in good hands going forward, and I appreciate that so much. Councilmember Feetson.
Well, thank you. First, I'll echo that, and certainly the vision was needed. You didn't know that a pandemic was happening and that there would be such a great need for enhanced communication with residents, but thank goodness, because I don't know where we would have been had that not been the case. And your vision, your execution, the hard work of the entire team working literally around the clock. I mean, we use that figuratively, but here it's literal. Has been really incredible. So sincere appreciation for that. I'm particularly interested in the new CRM program. I mean, that is at the heart of what we do. I always say that I'm a legislator second and a problem solver first. Most residents reach out to us not with ideas on groundbreaking legislation that we could introduce and pass on their behalf. Most residents reach out to us because they need help. They have an issue with local government. They have an issue with their family. They have an issue in their neighborhood, and they need us to help them. And we need a system that can actually respond to that in a meaningful and efficient way. And I will say IQ, perhaps there are those who have a higher IQ than I have that understand how that system works. But for those of us very much in the realm of mediocrity when it comes to IQ, I don't understand how that system works or why it doesn't work. And I think most residents feel the same way. Our teams feel the same way. And it really prevents us from solving problems, which is really who we are and what we do here and what we need to be doing on behalf of residents. So I'm very interested in this project. So I just wanted to highlight it and note it. I think we desperately need it. And so I know you're finalizing the terms here and you're going to bring a contractor or a software service on. Just wanted to get a little bit of better understanding of the timing, not on the contractual side, but on the operational side of at what point do we think it'll be ready to train staff members? At what point do we think it'll be ready where residents are going to see the benefits of the change?
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a shift over the summer as we move to the new system, and hopefully by September is our target date for having the new system operational.
Great. So September will be operational, and then there'll be a little bit of a transition. So by the time new council members arrive here, we're going to have quite a few of those, regardless of certain dynamics. It'll be in place and it'll be ready to go. We'll have worked out the kinks. I think that sounds like pretty good timing. Okay. Well, great. Well, I'm excited about that. The only other thing that I wanted to say is I'm also excited, and I think as we talk about the pandemic, a lot of things happen that we don't want, and a lot of things happened where we exposed really the shortcomings that happen in society, the shortcomings that happen in services and in county government, and we saw all the holes in the safety net, and that became crystal clear. But what also became clear is that there are different ways of doing things, and doing things the way that we've always done them is not necessarily the right way to do them. It's just the way we've always done them. And the crisis forced us to change our perspective, to think maybe a little bit differently, be willing to take a little bit more risk, things that for Chair Navarro may have been obvious, for others who take a little bit longer than she does to see where things are headed, maybe a little bit harder to transition. We did it, and we did it much faster than we otherwise would have done it. And there are some real benefits to that. And one of the real obvious examples of that is hybrid testimony, is providing access to folks who don't have time to sit here for 3 hours and wait to speak. And you shouldn't have to come to the council office to meet with council members. You shouldn't have to come to the council office building to address the issues that you care about in your community. We should make it as easy as possible for residents to do that. This is one example. There are infinite other examples, and we need to continue to do better on this. We're not where we need to be, but we are much closer than we were before the pandemic. And your work in making this possible, your vision, Chair Navarro, in understanding why it mattered and why we should be doing it, and us actually institutionalizing and formalizing what went well, what we did right, what we tripped into and realized was actually a better way of doing business, I think is a real positive that we should take out of this. So I just wanted to note those couple things, and I look forward, starting September and as we move forward, we're going to be stronger and better serving residents than we were, providing greater opportunity for more folks to engage in the process, and that is always a good thing. So thank you.
Councilor Marquez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for everything that you're doing. I think perhaps the one thing that government, the most important thing in government, and there's a lot of important things, but communication is the number one. If you don't communicate, you can't do anything else, and so that becomes a problem. Even in government, just like we use the term CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management, and the people, the public at home, unless they are following Air Packet, which most of them are not, it gets confusing for them as well. So you have managed to get us to that better place, and it was never easy, but it was easier because we had a chair that said, "Oh yeah, we're going to get there." And I've met her, and she's tough to say no to. So, but I also think it's very necessary to say that we do need to continue to be concerned about the different ways we communicate, because there's still, as this pandemic has proven, there are still people who do not use a computer, don't want to use a computer, don't own a computer, and so we need to make sure that they feel a part of what we are doing as well. And then, we kept saying that we were flying for this under the pandemic. We were flying the plane as we were building it, and we kept saying it, but we didn't build the plane. You all did, and it took so much necessary work, and some things worked and some things didn't, and the people that were the loudest about what didn't, but we never heard really what was working from the people that knew it. And so it is so very necessary that we do continue down the path. And to your point about, and to my colleagues' points as well, about the whole idea for the hybrid, when you stop and think that somebody from Silver Spring or whatever to come to a public hearing, if they have children, then they're going to have to pay a babysitter. If they don't have, even if they have transportation, it's going to take them, as we were talking about traffic this morning, it's going to take them a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get here and park and walk in the building and whatnot, and sit in the room and listen to everybody else's testimony, and then get to speak for 2 minutes so they can get back in their transportation or take the bus. So that a person who can do this from their living room, we want to hear their suggestions. And this allows that. So, this pandemic has been a crisis in so many ways, but it also has been a good silver lining in others. So I sincerely appreciate, because I know that when I was council president that year, I always said that you didn't work 24/7, you worked 25/8. I don't know how you did it, and you and your team, not just you, and Marlene as well, and everybody else. So we are most appreciative, and I obviously am supportive of this budget.
Awesome. I was remembering the conversations that we had in the past about policies around, could you participate via phone? Could you, and we had, I think, some studies that would looked into it and things of that nature. And boy, did we quickly just pivot and did, what we had to do. And Councilmember Cass, you're absolutely right. We can't turn the clock back. It's done. And so I am really pleased to hear that you're looking into how do you strengthen that. I'll have to say also a point of personal privilege. I have enjoyed so much working with Equin when I'm just like texting going, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on here. It's like, no problem. Let's figure it out. It's like, thank you. So for those of us who are not technology natives, I have to say that the entire team is really amazing. But I have just really enjoyed that because she has helped rescued me from moments where I'm like panicking because I don't know what I'm doing. And the only last thing I'll say is that I have no idea what Zoom's capacity, actually is of their other, platforms. But I think that if there was a way to find how we could do subtitles that are accurate when people are testifying in other language, that would be so awesome. Because then we avoid, the whole like lengthy thing, and it's why we did the subtitles here. So I don't know if the feature has been, it's sophisticated enough. I've tried it, and it seems a bit iffy, but I think that would be interesting if there was an opportunity to do that. I don't know how we would do it, but anyway. All right, everybody. Well, extraordinary work. I don't hear any objections, so I think we do support the Communications Nda. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the Inauguration and Transition Nda. This is in the budget every fourth year associated with an election. In part for the ceremonies of the actual inauguration and also for a transition, which generally has been used exclusively by the executive branch, and we'll see whether, with all the new council members coming in this year, we may need some support as well. Although I think it is primarily support for the new executive, if there is a new executive coming in. And this is $50,000 as it was 4 years ago, so no change in the funding.
Any objection to that, colleagues? Hearing none, we will accept that.
Right.
Thank you so much. All right, our last item is compensation and benefits follow-up, and we do have Mr. Howard who will walk us through this particular item.
Okay, good morning. Just when you thought it was safe to get back in the water, we have more compensation and benefits to work on. So we have 3 issues today that are all very different, but there are 3 follow-up issues coming out of the initial GO committee work session and then the full council discussion and decisions on April 26th. So I'll go through each of them in order, and we can stop on each one because they are so different. They don't necessarily relate to each other.
Okay, yeah, so if we can do that, that'd be great.
Perfect. So the first one is FY23 pay adjustments for police leadership service. At the GO committee work session, Councilmember Katz recommended and the committee supported having a follow-up discussion on looking at different alternatives to the proposed FY23 pay adjustments for police leadership service employees. And I think the Public Safety Committee also discussed this at their April 25th work session. On April 28th, the executive did submit a proposed FY23 budget amendment that would change the general wage adjustment provided to PLS. Instead of the flat $4,333 amount, he is recommending that they receive a 3.5% GWA in July of 2022 and a 3.0% GWA in January of 2023, the same GWAs as would be received by the FOP members. PLS members would still be eligible for performance-based pay increases. PLS and MLS, unlike general employees on the GSS scale, they don't receive service increments. They instead receive pay for performance. The pay for performance ranges based on your performance rating, and it can range from a 0% pay increase if you get a does not meet expectations rating, a 3.5% maximum if you get a successful rating, a 4.0% maximum if you get highly successful, and a 6.0% if you get an exceptional rating. So there's a range of what someone can receive depending on their actual performance. As part of the discussion at the Public Safety Committee, I know Ms. Farag and the committee discussed some of the issues that are facing the PLS and some of the salary compression issues where the different things that people below the PLS can receive in terms of overtime, roll call pay, and things like that are leading to a case where there are less folks who are willing to move on up the ranks, and because they can, overall, their net pay might not be the same. Now, council staff does note that providing the higher GWA in FY23 as recommended by the executive to the PLS employees would potentially address some of these issues, but we can't say with any definitive conclusion that it will improve retention or will encourage more officers to seek promotion to the PLS. That's kind of still an unknown. The other issue we wanted to bring up is the going back to the purpose of the PLS and its alignment with the MLS, the Management Leadership Service. The PLS was created by the council at the request of the county executive in 2018 via Expedited Bill 4017. At the time, the executive's rationale for creating the PLS was essentially to address the same issues that appear to be still present today: the interest in being promoted to lieutenant and the retention of senior police leadership. And if you go back through it and look through the staff reports, there's lots of discussion of that and the rationale there. And so at the time, the idea was that the PLS was intended to be aligned with the MLS, and the salaries would be aligned, and those folks would get the same increases each year. So we did want to note that if the council does want to go along with the executive's recommendation, it would be changing that alignment between the PLS and MLS. Regardless of the committee's decision on the GWA for PLS, we do think that there is concern that whether the PLS is meeting its intentions as it was designed in 2018. So regardless of the committee's decision, we do think that the committee should ask the executive to conduct a review of the whole PLS system to determine whether it's meeting its intended goals, and if not, to provide recommendations on needed adjustments or alternatives moving forward. So that would be a broader, big picture thing that we think needs to be done outside, completely separate from the decision on FY23 GWAs. So if the committee does support the executive's recommendation for the GWAs, it would add $435,468 in FY23 that would need to be considered as part of the council's reconciliation process. So I will stop there for any questions or discussion.
Okay, let me, I was going to turn to Mr. Councilmember Katz as the chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We have gotten ourselves into a real mess on this whole situation. We really have. I mean, the fact that a sergeant could make more money than a lieutenant, why would you become a lieutenant? I mean, and so I believe that since we can't solve the bigger problem today, I believe that we should, everyone from in the police management should get the same GWA that the External Order Police have negotiated, along with their bonus numbers, and everything else is part of this. I don't know how we can encourage, and I see the executive has a representative here, but I don't know how we can encourage that we do this as quickly as we possibly can. Montgomery County, proudly so, in one breath, has developed police chiefs for across the United States. The people retire from here. They've learned great lessons here. They go to smaller departments, sometimes even maybe larger departments, and of course they retired, so therefore they're getting that retirement. But we need to keep the people here as well to help us. And if we don't take care of what we're paying people, why would they stay? So I believe that what we should do, and I don't know how it would be worded, but I believe we should go along with the GWA and bonuses that have been negotiated through with the collective bargaining agreements for the police, and as quickly as possible ask the executives the executive side to come up with a different policy or a policy that would actually get us where we need to be, because we're not there now. That's right.
Councilmember Murphyson.
Yeah, thank you. I think the legislative term is a mess. Is that that's the formal term, the technical term? I agree with that, and we have a real challenge here, and I think we all recognize the challenge. There's a recruitment and retention challenge. We have major public safety issues, and we have to grapple with that, and we have to be serious about that. I take council staff's point here. The goal was to have a level of equity with the not just the management level service on the non-public safety side, which was the original intention of the policy before I arrived here. But this particular proposal was in response to the significant GWAs provided to rank and file police officers, members of the FOP, that were not being carried through like they are in the fire rescue service, from my understanding. And that was causing an exacerbation of an existing issue related to wage compression on the wage scale. And to Chair Katz's point, the idea that somebody wouldn't want to be promoted because it is financially disadvantageous to them is crazy. I mean, that's a system that is broken, significantly, that needs to be fixed. The only challenge that I have here, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't necessarily approve it, but it is a reflection of the problems that we're having that need to be dealt with in a much more holistic way than the county executive sending us an amendment in response to committee concerns in both the Public Safety Committee and the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee after the budget's been submitted, but a much more comprehensive and holistic and thoughtful way to do this. But based on what's before us now, the police leadership are higher because of the bonus pay. They're now at, could be up to 12.5% versus the 6.5% for FOP members, because if you do the 6% for excellent on top of the 6.5%, that's 12.5%. I'm not saying that we shouldn't necessarily do it. I just think that we need to understand that when you have a system that's broken, the one-off fixes that are attempting to address them end up not necessarily as thoughtful as they ought to be if we actually took a look at this in a much more sober and comprehensive way, not in the middle of the budget. So I just want, I don't have a proposal here on that, but I wanted to note that because I think it's an important situation. And I also just wanted to ask a question related to that. How was the fire rescue service issue dealt? Because you do have a difference here. There is no bonus pay. There's overtime, which is also different and needs to be looked at as well. But there's no bonus pay for FOP members. There's overtime that they are eligible for, just like in the fire rescue service. The leadership has access to the bonus pay based on their performance, which is, a different to there. So how is it dealt with in the fire rescue service, and how is this exactly how it was handled? Is this different? Because that was part of the other equity issue that we were looking at in the public safety realm. Fire rescue service was being treated one way while police leadership service was being treated another way, and that had some challenges as well.
Yeah, so for PLS, when we're talking about their performance-based bonuses, that's in lieu of a service increment. So FOP members would get a service increment of 3.5% this year, as well as they're also getting the salary schedule adjustment, which is another 3.5%. So in total, an FOP member could get up to 13.5%. So that would be potentially higher than the maximum that a PLS member could get under the executive's proposal, the 6.5% of GWA plus a max of 6% for the performance-based pay. Fire management is set up separately. They don't have the similar PLS type of setup. So they receive the same pass-through GWAs, and they are also eligible for service increments.
But no bonus pay.
Correct, but no performance.
But they are eligible for overtime.
I will ask Ms. Farag to clarify that. I don't want to say that incorrectly.
Good morning, everybody. In very extremely limited situations, fire management can get some overtime. They almost never earn, the higher up management almost never earns overtime. Captains do, lieutenants do, but not like assistant chiefs or battalion chiefs or deputy chiefs.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think all of this needs to be looked at. The comparison to the PLS and the MLS, which was the initial reason for the proposal by the prior county executive that was approved by the prior council, and also looking at how, well, they're not the same, the public safety equity as well between leadership in the fire rescue service and leadership in the police leadership service, because, clearly this is not a system that's working very well. But how do we address it right now? That's a much tougher question, and I appreciate where Chair Katz is coming from the public safety perspective. I'd be interested to hear where Chair Navarro is, but we have to address the wage compression problem, and that is just something that concerns me. I'm particularly concerned with the Capitol Police Chief, who has some relationships here, seeing an opportunity to recruit from within our ranks among others. So I'll yield to the chair.
Before I turn to you, Councilmember Katz, I would like to have somebody from the executive come to the table in case we have questions about what's going to happen moving forward, please, whoever is here on this item. Councilmember Katz.
I just wanted to point out, not that we haven't made it, let everyone know how confusing this whole thing is. On the bonus part, and this frog is certainly the one who can clarify what I'm about to say, but on the bonus part, a bonus does not go back into the base of the salary. So therefore, even if someone did receive a bonus, it's for the moment rather than for their retirement. Am I correct?
It's my understanding under the police leadership service that the pay for performance benefit could be given either as an increase in the level of the person's salary, which would make it similar to the increment that somebody gets in the FOP of the 3.5%, or it could be a one-time bonus that does not increase an officer's base pay.
And so what we're continuing to do by doing that is we're telling someone that it's not clear why someone would stay here based on what we're trying to do, and so, or what is being done. I believe we have to solve the problem today for what we can do today, and then go much deeper.
Thank you. So obviously I agree this is a difficult position to be in the middle of budget because we are facing an extraordinary challenge. And it's something that we are hearing about throughout the state and, quite honestly, across the nation. So as crime has risen, we've also seen a lot of difficulty recruiting, retaining, appropriate personnel in this space. And so I guess just a very quick question around, obviously we here make decisions that are legislative and budgetary and things of that sort, but it is the executive's responsibility to implement and to, track all of these issues and figure out ways to solve them, et cetera. So is there a plan? This committee obviously will want to send a letter requesting this review, but is there a plan? Was there any thought process, anything, that was done to kind of think through how to address this before we got into budget?
Yeah, so Chris Mullen, Office Manager, but I'll have to, I don't know the exact answer to that. I'll have to get back to you and talk to the staff that deals more with the compensation issues. But definitely I can work with council staff and work out, get you an answer to that question.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that whenever we have to make decisions like these in the middle of budget, that we have appropriate staff from the executive side and the administration. I think it's quite, worrisome for me that that in an item like this, where we know this is not just a straightforward thing, that we would not have appropriate staff here to answer those questions. So just to make a note of that for whatever future deliberations, that would be great. Mr. Howard, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in my conversations with the executive branch staff, I think they're very aware of this issue and, are open to looking at it. But I don't think they've had an opportunity to really delve deeply into kind of what it would look like. And I think it would be as with all the issues you have all mentioned, it's a complex issue, and it will take a little bit of time to work through and kind of figure out what is the right solution.
No, I understand that, but again, I would like to hear that directly from staff, from the administration, because this is how we are able to deliberate fully. So next time, I think for something this, of this nature, it would be nice to have somebody from the executive side that deals with the negotiations and things like that. Okay, so the decision point here for us is, can you restate that again, Mr. Howers?
Yes. The decision point would be to whether you want to support the executive's recommendation to adjust the GWAs for PLS to match the 6.5% for the FOP members, and that would add $435,468 to the FY23 proposed budget. And then the other point would be to send a letter requesting a review of the PLS structure, and I guess we can make it a little bit more broadly to say public safety management structure.
Yes, without objection. That's Councilor Katz.
Yes. But can I also ask for if we, and I don't know what the number is, and I don't even know how to say it, but if we could find the number for what would happen if the management side were to receive the same system as what was negotiated by the Fraternal Order of Police, by the collective bargaining agreement, meaning that for the bonuses, that rather than be a bonus, that it would be something that would be based in their base salary. I don't know if we can come up with that quickly.
So it is under the PLS and the personnel regulations. There's a structured system of how the performance-based pay in lieu of service increments works. So typically the increase would go to an employee's base pay. It can be as a lump sum if that's the CAO issues a memo each year about to all department directors for MLS and PLS pay. But if the employee's salary is below 90% of the pay band, then that amount typically goes to their base pay. If the employee is at 90% or above of the pay band, it still typically goes to the base pay, but the percentages are a little bit lower. And if the employee is at the top of the pay band, then it's a lump sum bonus. So it typically does go to the employee's base pay.
I think there again, I don't think we can solve that one today. And I also believe that it's my understanding that this salary discussion does not have involve the assistant chiefs and the chief, and that should be something else that is being discussed. I mean, we can't do it today.
Correct. Well, actually, they're part of the executive salary schedule, which is our next item. But yes, they have a different schedule than the PLS does.
Yeah.
All
right, let's get to the next item, please.
Okay, so our next item is a new salary schedule for legislative branch non-mayor employees, and this stems from the 2016 bill approved by the council, requiring a salary schedule for all non-mayor appointees. As Councilmember Navarro is well aware, initially there was some the council was not satisfied with the executive's proposed schedule, and so decided not to take action for a few years, and then the action was delayed by the pandemic. So here we are for consideration as part of the FY23 budget process, and council staff recommends the salary schedules on Table 1 on page 3, which would take effect July 1st, 2022 for legislative branch non-mayor employees. And as detailed in the law, these would only apply to employees who are promoted or hired after the salary schedule takes effect, so not for current employees. So the proposed schedule would create 3 bands, one for chiefs of staff, where the schedule would align with the executive branch scale for special assistants, deputy directors, and other similar types of positions, and is also intended to provide flexibility for council members in determining how they want to structure the pay schedules in their own office, depending on the amount of staff they want to hire. The second band, number 2, would be for the hearing examiners and the OLO director, and that would align with the M1 scale for MLS employees. And then the third grade would be the LB1, which would be for the council executive director, and it would align with the EX1 in the executive branch scale, which is the assistant chief administrative officer's piece. Table 2, also on page 3, is the executive's recommended executive branch non-merit salary schedule. We didn't have this at the time of the GO committee session, but the executive is recommending the same salary schedule as last year for executive branch non-merit employees. And you can see that's divided up into 4 levels, with the chief administrative officer and assistant CAOs having 1 level, the principal department directors, police and fire chiefs and county attorney having the EX2 level. And then the EX3 includes special assistants, deputy department directors, division and service chiefs, and assistant chiefs of police, which you were just talking about, Mr. Katz. Then the third piece of this is a proposed inspector general salary schedule. And in reviewing the classification structure for the inspector general position, the executive branch determined that the current structure does not align with the other executive and legislative branch non-merit employees. And there's 2 specific issues that were discovered. The first is that, unlike other senior management positions, the inspector general was classified on the general salary schedule as a grade 40, and that it had just been done for a very long time and had never been changed. And the other positions in grade 40 did not align with the duties and responsibilities of a department director type of position. The second one was in the leave structure, and so as a position that's classified in the GSS, the inspector general would accrue sick and annual leave. However, it's different from other senior level management positions who accrue paid time off, PTO, instead of sick and annual leave. And so there was a situation where the inspector general was supervising MLS employees who were accruing more leave time than the inspector general position. So the executive has recommended three things as part of this to kind of to treat this position more equitably with other senior management positions. The first is to create a new salary schedule for the Inspector General, which is aligned with the current Executive Branch EXE2 level. So this proposed schedule would better align the salary with comparable IG positions in the region, and we've attached a report that the Executive Branch put together showing the comparison. And I do want to point out that a new salary schedule would not impact the current salary of the Inspector General. That would remain unchanged. The second fix would be to provide leave via paid time off, PTO, like is done for all other non-merit appointed senior management positions within the county government. And the third would be to have the IG continue to receive GWAs and service increments the same as other non-represented employees on the general services schedule. And this would ensure that compensation decisions for that position are kept completely independent from the other performance-based pay systems that are set up for the other non-merit employees. So due to the nature of that position, that seemed to be the more appropriate way to handle adjustments for the Inspector General. So the council staff recommendation would be to approve the legislative branch schedule as detailed on Table 1, approve the executive's recommended non-merit executive branch schedule as detailed on Table 2, and to approve the new IG schedule, which is detailed on Table 3. And I will stop there for questions.
All right. Any comments, colleagues, questions? I think we will support that without objection.
Okay, great. So our last issue is for the executive did send over a proposed budget amendment on April 28th. That includes adding $1.0 million to the compensation and benefits non-departmental account for additional costs related to adding Juneteenth as a county holiday. On March 15th, the council formally adopted the executive regulation proposed by the executive that added this as an official holiday to the county's calendar. Anytime there is a holiday, there are additional personnel costs, expenditures, because certain employees that are required to work on that holiday receive holiday pay instead of at their normal rate. The executive's March 15th budget did not assume additional expenditures for this holiday, for the personnel costs. And the executive staff has indicated that these costs will be built into the FY24 budget and beyond based on the actual experience similar to what is done for other holidays. So council staff notes that the committee has 2 options related to this proposed amendment. The first, you could approve the executive's recommendation, which would add that $1 million to the NDA. That would be considered then as part of the whole reconciliation process. The second option is you don't have to act now to add the $1 million to the NDA at this time, but instead you could ask the executive to send over a supplemental appropriation in FY23 if it's needed after the actual expenses are incurred. Since Juneteenth would occur, that holiday occurs at the very end of the fiscal year. It is possible that there will be natural savings in personnel costs that occur via lapse and turnover through the year, so there may already be sufficient appropriation authority in the budget to cover whatever additional personnel costs are related to that holiday event, and a supplemental would not be needed.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. First of all, we all support Juneteenth as a holiday. We have talked about it extensively here at the council. I'm pleased that we're moving in this direction, and so that's not part of the discussion. The question is how to bear the cost of this, and I presume most of the cost is related to when you declare a holiday and you have county employees who work on holidays because they perform essential public services, that there's overtime related
Correct.
to that and
Correct,
time
and holiday pay. And it doesn't have anything to do with the celebration events or anything
Sure.
like that.
I just wanted to clarify that because I think it's important for folks not to think that we're spending $1 million for celebratory activities. This is to bear the cost of declaring a holiday and the rights of employees and the cost to the county budget. Do we know why the county executive didn't include this? I mean, we've known that this was going to be a holiday for 9-10 months now, at least.
Yeah, I believe it's because it was approved on March 15th when the budget came over. And of course, budget decisions have to be made a week or so before that. I think that's the reason why it was not included in the recommended budget.
So up until early March, the county executive didn't know whether or not we were going to have Juneteenth be a county holiday. We declared it a county holiday last year, didn't we?
But
Wasn't Juneteenth? Didn't we take off for Juneteenth last year? I believe we responded to President Biden, who issued an executive order shortly before it, and everybody had determined that at that point we weren't going to get to the last minute declaration, that we were going to do this permanently moving forward. There were discussions at the council. We had a resolution about this.
The council took action on the resolution on March 15th of this year. And that was
So prior to the council taking the formal action at the county council, the county executive was not planning to have Juneteenth be a holiday?
of course we were planning, but we need the official action, then can follow with the budget, the appropriate budget action. Until the council approves it, it's not an action that it's not
Well,
an
I don't want to get into a back and forth conversation here, but I think it's somewhat disingenuous to suggest that the county executive doesn't send over things that haven't been approved by the council, because this budget is littered with things that the county council has not been privy to, has not decided on, has not reviewed, but the county executive would like to see it, and so he recommends it in his budget. But we'll put that aside for a minute. Do we have a projection right now of, based on the almost 250 vacancies for full-time equivalents that we reviewed yesterday, over 1,000, I think 1,023 off the top of my head, 1,023 seasonal and temporary employees, what the personnel costs savings are projected to be by the end of the fourth quarter of the fiscal year?
I don't have that information right now what the savings would be, but we can definitely get back to you on that.
I mean, I think it would be helpful to get back to us. It seems imprudent from my perspective to approve an NDA, or to approve the $1 million for this, for the NDA, if there is more than adequate personnel savings in the budget, particularly given the number of vacancies and all the challenges with recruiting that we talked about yesterday. A fraction of those positions, I mean, a very small fraction of those positions would be well in excess of $1 million. So again, totally appreciate that we're moving in this direction. Absolutely. I'm glad that we are. Appreciate President Biden's leadership on this at the national level. Appreciate the county executive following suit. But it seems like this is $1 million that we do not need to approve at this point. And if we could get an answer to that projection as well, that would be very helpful. Thanks.
I guess what I would propose is that we do not take up this item today, but perhaps when all of this is coming to full council. We pulled it out of the consent calendar, and by then we should have that information. I personally think that it is important for us to approve something because it is a very, I think, bad message to send to our employees that yes, we declared it, et cetera, but we're not going to approve the appropriate amount to make sure that those who have to work actually can celebrate it. I think that is part, it goes together. But I do believe that it would be nice to have a bit more of a, accurate picture so that if it is $1 million, I mean, I would support it. But if for some reason, after you do your analysis, it's less than that in terms of the projection, then we can also take that into consideration because we do have a growing reconciliation list. But absent that information at this moment, I don't think that we should act on this and we should just bring it to full council and have that information. That would be just a proposal from my colleagues. Councilor McCarthy.
I agree with you, Madam Chair. My concern, and I think Councilmember Friedson said it well, my concern is that the message that we would be sending by saying that we're not approving the $1 million is that we're not supportive of the celebration, the June 10th holiday, and I certainly, all of us are supportive of that. So we want to send the right message, but we also want to send the right budget. And I do believe that we need to get the additional information so that we can send the right message the right way and have the right dollars associated with it. And of course, when someone sends over, and I understand it's always a guess, but when you say $1 million, what was that based on? I mean, that could be an arbitrary figure, and we might need $2 million. I don't know. I mean, you deal with arbitrary figures, and that becomes an arbitrary number. So anyhow, I believe that we do need the additional information so that we can celebrate the way we should be doing it. Thank you.
All right, so that's what we'll do. Thank you so much, Mr. Howard. Okay, so I believe that this is done, that we're done, correct? This is it.
This one, we come back.
For this particular one, the GO committee never stops.
There you go.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate it. So we are adjourned.
Till 11.
No tenemos edad, no tenemos